Hello, students. Today we'll discuss the reading section of the October 2020 PSAT. We'll be doing all 5 passages one by one. So we start with the first passage, literature. Let's begin. This passage is adapted from Maxine Clare, October Suite. When she began occasionally calling herself October, she was only 10 years old. Others said it was ridiculous, said she was nobody trying to be somebody. But she made convincing noises about given names, how you could give one to yourself, how it could be more like you than your real name. She never dared say she hated the name that her father had saddled on her, never said the new name had anything to do with the memory of her mother, who had lost her life. Instead, she had mentioned all the strange names of people they knew, like Daybreak Honor and a classmate's aunt, 14. The pastor of their church had named his daughter Dainty. Usually, that fact had made people stop and consider. Then, when she was girl turned grown 17, struck by her own strangeness and by the whole idea of seasons, she had put it on like a coat and fastened it around her. October was her name. Mid morning, on a flaming day in that season, a Saturday, October sat in the upstairs kitchenette at Pemberton House, sewing on her black iron singer. It was 1950, she was 23 and thanking her lucky stars for a room in the best house for Negro women teachers in Wyandotte County. Situated in the middle of the block on Oshala Avenue, the two-story white clapboard set the standard for decent, with its deep front yard and arbor-like pear trees, its clipped hedges and the painted wicker chairs on the porch. From her window, she could look down on the backyard and see Mrs. Pemberton's precious marigolds bunched along the back fence, and in front of them, a few wilting tomato plants and short rows of collards that waited to be tenderized by the first frost in Mr. Pemberton's garden. So far, which we have seen that the passage is about a girl called October who had taken on this name out of her own volition. This wasn't the name that was given to her, but she did not like her given name, and so she took this on. This name had something to do with her mother. We know that from the first paragraph, who's now the mother who's now dead. And we also notice that she's now a grown woman, right? This passage starts when she's 10 years old and starts calling herself October, and now she's a grown woman and she's 23 and she's now a teacher, and she's staying in this beautiful house for women teachers in Wyandotte County. Right. A few months before, on the very same June day that Cora had pushed her to take advantage of the vacancy coming up at Pemberton House, October Brown had knocked on the door hoping. Word was that you had to know somebody. For her cadet teacher year at Stowe School, she had lived with the Reverend Jackson and his wife, not so bad, but farther away and further down the scale of nice. Mr. Pemberton in undershirt and suspenders had opened the door, but his wife, Lydia Pemberton, gold hoop sparkling crown of silvery braids, had invited her in. We don't take nothing but school teachers, Mrs. Pemberton had said. When October explained that indeed she was a teacher, Mrs. Pemberton had looked up and down. Whereabouts? When October had told her about the cadet year at Stowe, her room at the Jackson's place mentioned Chillicothe, Ohio, where she had grown up, and because Mrs. Pemberton had seemed unmoved and uninterested so far, spoken of her two aunts who had raised her and her sister Virgie with good home training. You all are getting younger every year. You know any of the other girls here? Mrs. Pemberton had asked. October explained that Cora Jocelyn Jones had been her lead teacher at Stowe, that they had become good friends. The mention of an established connection to a recognized good citizen had finally satisfied Mrs. Pemberton. Follow me, she said, and led October on a two-story tour of hardwood floors and high ceilings, French provincial sitting room, smoke blue, damask drapes and lace chairs, mahogany dining table that could comfortably seat 12, at least, 2 buffets, china closets, curio cabinets full of whatnots. Upstairs, all the women's rooms Mrs. Pemberton did tap lightly before she charged in, had highly polished mahogany or oak beds, tables, desks, squills, or chenille bedspreads, no nails allowed, papered walls. Photographs, though, on desks and floor lamps in wing chairs, stuffed chairs, Venetian blinds, and balances. Then she followed her. Then she showed her the kitchenette, a larger bedroom with a two burner and a tiny icebox. And you see the sun goes down right outside that window, right there. And as they went back down the stairs, Mrs. Pemberton told her in no uncertain terms that nobody under their roof smoked or drank, and that no men were allowed upstairs, but that the women could have company in the sitting room downstairs. Yes, October understood. Yes, she was lucky to have her kitchenette. Right, so after introducing October to us, the passage takes us through this scene at the Pemberton's house where she has applied to be a teacher. And rather, I think this is not, yeah, this seems to be a hostel of sorts where only teachers are allowed to stay, right? So she hasn't really applied to be a teacher at the Pembertons, but rather the Pembertons only allow working teachers to stay in their hostel. And this entire scene describes, so one, obviously, October is impressed with the place. We know that from the way she describes the Pemberton's house. And we also know that from the way the house itself is described when Mrs. Pemberton shows her the house, right? Um, and then we also know that she's taken in because, she's able to convince Mrs. Pemberton of a connection. And that's it, right? That's how the story proceeds. Okay, so let's look at the questions. In the passage, people react to October's decision to rename herself by praising her originality, admitting that they are jealous of her new name, criticizing her as arrogant, urging her to choose another name instead. Arrogant? Did they call her arrogant? Others said it was ridiculous that she was nobody trying to be somebody. That's arrogant, right? Right. So we'll go with C then. They kind of, sorry, where is it? Yeah. C, right? They think that what she's trying to do is just, trying to be somebody. So arrogance is a good word for that. At line 20, the focus of the passage shifts from line 20, mid-morning on a flaming day in the season. Okay, so this is when, okay, this is when okay. An analysis of a key decision made by a character to a summary of its consequences. A description of how a character perceives herself to a description of how others perceive her. An affectionate portrait of a character to an objective survey of her interaction with others. A brief account of a character's youth to a more detailed discussion of her adult life. Yeah, I would say D is a good answer because so far we have a very small, quite detailed, not detailed, but quite a rich but small understanding of October. And then it shifts to the fact that she decides to take up residence at the Pembertons. And this is how it describes from. So it's definitely D. It gets into greater detail here, right? So I'll just write D first and then I can explain to you the other options. So it's not any decision that the key decision in the option A could be the renaming that she has, but there is no consequence to it, right? So A is not correct. A description of how a character perceives herself to a description of, again, if B, I could somehow say that, okay, she perceives herself in a way that lets her choose a new name, even though that's not a complete answer. The second part is definitely not correct. There is no description of how others perceive her. It's just an interaction. And option C, an affectionate portrait of a character to an objective survey. So again, this is there is no objective survey of her interaction with others, right? It's just it's very specific, detailed interaction with the Pembertons, right? So D is the best answer. Okay. Which choice provides the best evidence that October had originally been uncertain about whether she could secure a room in the Pemberton house? Okay, she was initially uncertain. So let's just write the line numbers 25 to 30. 1 second, I'll just let me try and make some space. Yeah. 25 to 30, 37 to 41, 41 to 44. Okay. And yeah, and one more, 49 to 52. Okay, so let's look at 25 to 30 first. Situated in the middle of the block on Ursula Avenue, the two-story. So this just describes the place, right? So this is not about her uncertainty to secure a place there. 37, a few months before, on the very same day, October Brown had knocked on the door, hoping. Okay. 41, for her cadet teacher, she had lived with father away, right? And who looked her up and down. I think B, right? Because it says a few months before, on the very same June day that Cora had pushed her to take advantage, October had knocked on the door, hoping. She was hopeful. She was not sure. Yeah, she was not sure, so she was hoping. 49 to 52 is just Mrs. Pemberton. 41 to 44 is just what she had done as a cadet. And yeah, so it is B, right? That's the hopeful part. Okay, so third question 3 is B. Oh, wait. Yeah, B. Okay. As used in line 57, unmoved most nearly means because Mrs. Pemberton had seemed unmoved and uninterested so far. So she had described all of this, but she didn't seem interested. She was not moved. So the best would be unimpressed, right? She's trying to present, October is trying to present herself to Mrs. Pemberton as a suitable candidate for the hostel, for the house. And Mrs. Pemberton so far was unmoved. She was unimpressed. Okay. In the 11th paragraph, the description of the room serves mainly to, so yeah, this entire part, right? It kind of, I think this is done to kind of say that it was something which was desirable, something that October especially would love, right? Confirm that October and Mrs. Pemberton have similar tastes. Establish that the house is well kept and carefully furnished. Contrast the bedrooms and justify, right? So it's very clearly B, to say that, it was well kept and it was well maintained. The details of how Mrs. Pemberton enters the room upstairs serve mainly to portray her as somewhat unconcerned with the tenant's privacy. No, that's not true, because it does mention that, Mrs. Pemberton did tap lightly before she charged him. Right? See, she tapped lightly. So illustrate how her actions conflict with her professed uh, stress, her impatient with formalities and social customs in general. Oh, okay. So then it's A, right? She just taps lightly and then barges in, which means that, she gives very little time to the tenants to kind of ready themselves for a visitor. So she is rather unconcerned with the tenant's privacy. Based on the passage, which choice best identifies a non-negotiable condition for residing at Pemberton House, belonging to a family in good standing, being recommended to Mrs. Pemberton, abiding by certain notions of personal respectability, taking care to preserve the historical features of the house. It's going to be C, right? Because it comes here that Mrs. Pemberton told October in no uncertain terms that nobody was allowed to smoke or drink and that they could only meet men or have company in the sitting room. So it is C. Okay. Which choice provides the best evidence? So that should be lines 85 to 90. 85 to 90. Yeah. And in context, the repetition of the word yes serves mainly to yes, October understood. Yes, she was lucky to have a kitchenette. So she's kind of eager to take this place, right? She wants to start her life. So reiterate October's long-term plans to live at Pemberton House. Illustrate a shift in October's attitude towards Mrs. Pemberton. Underscores her satisfaction with the realities. Emphasize Mrs. Pemberton's intolerance of viewpoints differing from her own. No, this is October. Yes, she was lucky to have her kitchenette. So this is Mrs. Pemberton. Yeah, there's no shift in attitude to Mrs. Pemberton particularly, but she definitely is okay with the rules, right? So I'm not going with B. There's no long-term plans. I'm not sure A is the right answer. D talks about Mrs. Pemberton and not October. So it's like it has to be C, right? She understands the realities of living there and she's satisfied, she's okay with them. So I'm going to go with C for this. Okay, let's try and grade this. Where is the answer key? Yeah, the answer key is here. Yeah, correct answer, right? So we'll start with CDBAB, CDBAB, ACDC, ACDC. Okay, great. So this was the literature passage from the 2020 PSAT. Hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.